The sharp sting of my mother's words cut through the clatter of dishes at the family dinner table in our suburban home, just outside New York City. "You're 32 years old, Dream, and still no husband, no children. You're a failure to this family," she said, her voice heavy with the kind of disappointment that had defined my life for years. Colette's hand found mine beneath the linen tablecloth, a silent anchor in the storm, but I knew the real storm was about to break because our secret was no longer safe. My mother, Mrs. Nguyen, continued her lecture, as if the rest of the family wasn't shifting uncomfortably in their seats. My father sat at the head of the table, his face stern and unyielding, the same expression he wore when he first immigrated from Vietnam and built his small accounting firm from nothing. He nodded along to every word my mother said, adding his own barbs about how a woman without a family of her own was like a tree without roots. My older sister Lynn, who had married her high school sweetheart and popped out 2 perfect grandchildren, already gave me that pitying look that made my blood boil. Even my younger brother Min, who was barely making it through college, joined in with a joke about me being the eternal bachelorette. I forced a smile, my heart pounding, as I glanced at Colette across from me. She looked every bit the composed, successful woman she was, with her tailored blouse and calm blue eyes that always saw straight through my defenses. We had been together for 8 years now, married in a quiet ceremony 2 years ago in Massachusetts, where it was legal long before New York caught up fully in our hearts. But to my family, she was just my business partner and close friend from grad school, the one who helped me launch our investment firm. They had no idea that the late nights poring over market reports were intertwined with stolen kisses and whispered promises of a future free from their expectations. The pressure had been building for months. Every phone call from my mother started with questions about my love life, or lack thereof. "When are you going to settle down, Dream? Vietnamese girls don't stay single forever. You're embarrassing us in front of the community." I had heard it all before, the subtle and not so subtle hints that my career success in finance meant nothing if I didn't have a man by my side and babies in my arms. They wanted the traditional path, the one Lynn had followed without question. But that path had never felt right for me. From the moment I met Colette in our finance seminar at Columbia, the spark was undeniable. She challenged me, made me laugh, and saw the ambitious dreamer beneath my reserved exterior. Together we had turned a small idea into something massive, but we kept it under wraps, using neutral names and separate public profiles to avoid questions. As the main course was served roasted duck with rice, my favorite from childhood, I felt the familiar tug of guilt. Part of me wondered if they were right. Was I selfish for choosing Colette over the life they envisioned? The inner voice that echoed their words whispered that I was betraying my culture, my roots, the sacrifices my parents made coming to America, so I could have opportunities. Yet every time I looked at Colette, I knew the truth. Our love wasn't a rebellion, it was my reality. We had built something incredible together, navigating the cutthroat world of investments where women, especially queer women, faced invisible barriers. Our fund D&C Legacy Partners was thriving, but we presented it as a joint venture between friends to keep things quiet. The name was our private joke, D for Dream and C for Colette, our legacy. Dinner dragged on with stories of Lynn's kids and Min's latest failed startup attempt. I nodded along, trying to deflect questions about my dating life with vague answers about being too busy with work. Colette played her role perfectly, laughing at the right moments and steering conversation away when it got too pointed. But I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers tightened around her glass. She hated this charade as much as I did, but she understood the cost of coming out too soon. My family wasn't just conservative, they were deeply rooted in traditions that viewed anything outside the heterosexual norm as a stain on the family honor. Coming out could mean losing them entirely, and despite everything, I still loved them. Then came dessert mango sticky rice and the moment that changed everything. My father had turned on the evening news in the background, as he always did, a habit from his days following stock markets. The anchor was talking about the finance sector when suddenly the headline flashed across the screen: major breakthrough in alternative investments, D&C Legacy Partners announces landmark partnership valued at over $400 million. The reporter continued, sources confirm the fund is led by Dream Nguyen and Colette Harrington, 2 rising stars in the industry whose private strategies have yielded unprecedented returns for their investors. The room went silent. My mother's fork clattered to her plate. Lynn's eyes widened as she pulled out her phone to search the news. "What is this, Dream?" my father demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "This fun with your name and Colette's? You told us it was a small side project with your friend. $400 million, how is this possible?" I swallowed hard, my pulse racing as the truth hung in the air ready to explode. Colette met my gaze with a mix of pride and apprehension. This was it, the night our hidden world collided with the one I had been desperately trying to keep separate. The family that called me a failure was about to learn just how wrong they were, but at what price? My mother stood so fast her chair tipped backward, hitting the floor with a loud thud that made everyone jump. "Dream, what is this nonsense?" she shouted, her voice cracking with a mix of shock and rage. "You and Colette running some giant fund together? How long have you been lying to us about everything?" The room erupted into chaos as Lynn scrolled frantically on her phone, reading the details out loud about our early investments that had snowballed into massive returns for tech startups and sustainable energy projects. My father slammed his hand on the table, demanding I explain how two women could possibly pull this off without a man's guidance, as if our success was impossible on our own. I tried to stay calm, but the years of pent-up guilt rushed forward like a wave. "Mom, Dad, this isn't a lie, it's our life. Colette and I built this from nothing after grad school. We spotted trends others missed, we took calculated risks, and we won." But the real truth was bigger, and I could feel Colette willing me to say it, yet I held back, afraid the full reveal would shatter them completely. Lynn cut in, her tone sharp and jealous. "You always acted like you were too good for our traditions, now we see why. You hid this success to make us look bad, didn't you?" Min just stared, mouth open, while my aunts and uncles whispered in Vietnamese about shame and secrets. Colette rose slowly, her presence commanding even in the storm. "Mr. and Mrs. Nguyen, I respect your family deeply, but Dream and I are partners in every sense. The fund carries our names because we poured our hearts into it." My mother turned on, her eyes blazing. "How dare you speak to me like that in my house? This is not right. A woman should support her husband, not replace him." The moral weight of her words hit me hard. Was I the one destroying our family bond by choosing authenticity over their version of duty? Inside, I wrestled with the choice I had made years ago to hide our marriage, to spare them the community gossip, the lost invitations to weddings, the sideways glances at the temple. Yet here we were, the deception unraveling anyway. The argument stretched late into the night, with accusations flying like arrows. My father accused me of wasting the education they sacrificed, for calling it selfish ambition that ignored filial piety. Lynn revealed she had suspected something for months after seeing us together at a conference, but chose silence until now, her betrayal stinging like salt in a wound. I defended our success, citing the jobs we created, the charities we funded, but every word felt hollow against their cultural expectations. Colette squeezed my hand under the table, reminding me silently that our love was worth the fight. By midnight, the family dispersed with cold goodbyes, my mother crying in the kitchen about how I had broken her heart. Driving home with Colette, I stared out the window, questioning if my silence had been protection or cowardice. The price of my choices was clear now: family ties strained, success exposed, and the moral line between loyalty and self-truth blurred forever. At our apartment, Colette pulled me into an embrace, her voice soft but firm. "We did nothing wrong, Dream." But I could see the toll on her too, the way her shoulders slumped from the confrontation. We talked until dawn, replaying every harsh word. I admitted the guilt that had eaten at me for years, the fear that coming out would mean losing the only family I knew. Colette shared her own pain from her conservative parents who had barely accepted her career, let alone her sexuality. Together we faced the reality that the fund reveal was just the beginning. The next days would bring more questions, more judgment, and the real test of what we were willing to sacrifice for the life we had built. Sleep evaded me as I lay there, wondering if their disappointment made me the failure they claimed, or if their refusal to see my truth was the greater wrong. The morning after the dinner felt like waking from a nightmare that refused to end. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from Lynn demanding I come clean about the full extent of my relationship with Colette, and from my mother pleading for me to see a counselor to fix what she called my confusion. Colette made coffee in our sunlit kitchen, her movements deliberate as she processed the fallout. We sat at the island reviewing the fun news coverage, which had exploded overnight, with analysts praising our innovative approach, but hinting at the personal story behind the partnership. I scrolled through comments, some supportive of women in finance, others laced with prejudice that made my stomach turn. This was the societal pressure I had feared, the whispers that two women succeeding together must be unnatural. Flashbacks flooded my mind as I sipped the coffee, taking me back to our first meeting in that crowded Columbia lecture hall. Colette had raised her hand during a debate on ethical investing, her argument sharp and passionate, catching my attention immediately. After class we talked for hours in the library about market ethics and personal dreams. She was from a middle-class family in upstate New York, driven to prove herself in a male-dominated field. Our friendship deepened over study sessions, turning into late-night walks where we shared vulnerabilities. The first time she took my hand under a street lamp, I knew this was more than friendship. We fell in love slowly, carefully navigating the risks of being out in our professional circles, while keeping it hidden from families. Those early years were a blend of excitement and caution. Our first big win came with a small tech startup investment that tripled in value within a year, giving us the capital to expand. We celebrated quietly in a rented cabin upstate, toasting to our future, but always aware that one leak could cost us everything. Colette had sacrificed promotions at her law firm to focus on our venture, knowing the legal hurdles for same-sex couples in business. I had turned down family-arranged dates, faking interest in men to buy time. The moral conflict was constant. Was I honoring my parents' sacrifices by achieving financial independence, or dishonoring them by living a lie? Now with the fund public, those choices haunted me. Back in the present, Colette suggested we issue a joint statement clarifying the partnership without full personal details, but I hesitated. A call from my father interrupted us, his voice tired but firm. "Dream, the family is meeting tonight without you to discuss this. Your mother has not slept. Lynn told Aunt Mai, who is spreading it in the community. How could you let this happen?" I tried to explain the fund was legitimate success built on hard work, but he cut me off, calling it deception that eroded trust. Hanging up, I felt the weight of potential betrayal from within my own family. Colette hugged me, whispering we could face it together. But I pulled away, momentarily overwhelmed by the trade-off. Was keeping our love private the right moral choice, or had it led to this painful exposure? That evening, alone in our living room, we reviewed financial reports to distract ourselves, but the conversation turned deep. Colette admitted her own internal struggle, wondering if pushing for more openness earlier would have prepared everyone. I confessed the nights I lay awake questioning if my refusal to marry a man was selfish or simply honest. The societal judgment loomed large in my mind, the articles already speculating on our personal lives, the potential client pullouts from conservative investors. By midnight we had decided to stand firm, but the cost was mounting: family silence, business scrutiny, and the emotional toll of constant defense. The next confrontation would test us further, and I wondered if my awakening to full authenticity was worth the family fractures it caused. The community gossip spread faster than I could have imagined. By the following afternoon, my phone lit up with calls from distant relatives and old family friends expressing shock and concern, some offering prayers for my soul, others demanding explanations for how I could embarrass the Nguyen name. Lynn had indeed told Aunt Mai, who in turn shared it at the local Vietnamese Association meeting, turning our private success into public scandal. The betrayal cut deep because Lynn had always been the golden child, the one who followed every rule. Yet here she was using my truth against me out of what felt like jealousy for the spotlight our fund now commanded. At the office, the impact was immediate. 2 major clients emailed citing moral concerns about the partnership's leadership, while a board member suggested rebranding to distance from the personal narrative. Colette arrived at my desk, her face drawn from her own meetings where colleagues whispered. We locked ourselves in the conference room reviewing damage control strategies. But the real battle was internal. I considered the compromise that had haunted me for days, perhaps attending a family-arranged blind date, just to ease the pressure by time. The idea made me sick, but the moral dilemma raged: was a temporary lie better than permanent estrangement? Colette sensed my turmoil and confronted me gently. Dream, if we hide again, we lose ourselves. Remember the night we signed the fund papers in that tiny office, vowing no more secrets between us? Her words reminded me of the sacrifices she had made, leaving her own family events early to avoid questions about her single status. The pressure from society was relentless, media outlets digging for dirt, framing our story as a sensational queer success tale rather than professional achievement. That evening at home we faced another family intervention, my parents arriving unannounced with Lynn in tow, their faces set in determination. The confrontation escalated quickly, my mother crying about lost faith in the temple community, my father questioning every life choice I had made since college. Lynn accused me of using the fund to prove superiority, calling it a slap to her traditional life. I defended our love, explaining how it fueled our success, but each word seemed to widen the chasm. Colette stood beside me, calmly stating facts about our marriage and shared assets, but the prejudice poured out in their responses, viewing it as a phase or influence from American culture. The trade-off became clear: I could cling to their approval by retreating into shadows, or embrace my truth at the cost of their presence in my life. As they left with warnings of disownment, I collapsed on the couch, the awakening beginning to take root. The years of internal conflict had prepared me for this, the realization that hiding had protected no one, only delayed the pain. Colette held me through the tears, reminding me of our shared dreams, the lives we had changed through investments. Yet the guilt lingered. Was my decision to live openly the cause of this rift, or had their rigid expectations forced my hand all along? Business calls came late that night, some supportive, others pulling out, forcing us to recalculate everything. The drama was far from over, but in that moment I felt the first stirrings of strength to face the consequences head-on. Weeks blurred into a haze of tense meetings and sleepless nights as the full weight of the revelation settled over our lives. Investors pulled back, citing reputational risks, while supportive ones doubled down, creating a volatile mix that tested our fund daily. Colette and I worked around the clock restructuring portfolios, but the real crisis was personal. My parents had gone silent, refusing calls and blocking me on social media, a cultural shunning that stung deeper than any argument. Lynn sent a long message detailing how my choices had divided the family, making her the mediator against her will, her words laced with resentment that felt like another layer of betrayal. The climax came on a rainy Saturday when my father finally agreed to meet at a neutral cafe in the city. Colette insisted on coming for support, and as we sat across from him and my mother, the air thickened with unspoken pain. They listed every grievance: the hidden marriage, the fund secrecy, the perceived rejection of Vietnamese values. My mother wept openly, asking what she had done wrong in raising me to choose this path. The societal prejudices they voiced were raw, viewing queer relationships as a Western corruption that threatened family lineage. I listened, fighting back tears, the moral conflict peaking inside me. Had I been wrong to prioritize my heart over their expectations, or were they wrong to demand I erase my identity for their comfort? In that charged moment, something shifted. I spoke from the deepest part of myself, recounting the fear that had kept me silent, the love that had given me courage, and the success that proved my path valid. Colette added her perspective, sharing how our partnership had not only built wealth, but also resilience against the world. My father listened stone-faced, but I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, perhaps the first crack in his resolve. My mother, however, held firm, insisting I choose family or this life. The trade-off hung heavy: I could walk away from them forever or compromise my truth. But in choosing neither, I stood firm, declaring that my love for Colette was not a choice but who I was, and our fund was proof of what authenticity could achieve. Walking out into the rain, Colette and I held hands, the awakening complete. The pain of potential loss was real, but so was the freedom of no longer hiding. We discussed the business adjustments needed, perhaps diversifying to weather the storm, and the personal boundaries we would set with family. Back home, we reflected on the journey, the decisions that had led here, and the price paid in strained ties and public scrutiny. Yet through it all, our bond had strengthened, forged in the fire of opposition. The drama had forced me to confront every internal doubt and emerge clearer about what mattered. As the days passed, partial messages from Min hinted at possible reconciliation, but the road ahead remained uncertain, filled with the ongoing cost of living true to myself. Months later, the dust had settled into a new, uneasy normal. The fund had stabilized thanks to strategic pivots and loyal clients who valued results over rumors, allowing us to expand into new markets. Colette and I had grown even closer, navigating the aftermath with weekly reflections that turned challenges into growth. My family remained distant, my mother sending occasional texts about health updates, but avoiding any mention of Colette or the fund. Lynn had softened slightly after seeing the positive community impact of our charitable arm, but old wounds lingered. Min visited once, sharing that the younger generation in the family was more open, sparking faint hope for bridges. Looking back at the dinner that sparked it all, I saw the full arc of decisions and their prices. The initial shock of the reveal had forced confrontations that exposed deep prejudices and my own fears. I had traded family harmony for personal truth and professional transparency, paying in sleepless nights and lost connections. Colette had traded her privacy for solidarity, standing by me through every accusation. The societal drama had tested our resolve, highlighting how bias could undermine even proven success. Yet the awakening was profound. I no longer questioned my path, recognizing that hiding had only delayed the inevitable pain while authenticity brought genuine strength. Partial family gatherings happened tentatively, a birthday for my niece where Colette was invited, but conversation stayed surface level. The moral questions remained alive in quiet moments. Was the love we shared worth the family fractures, or had my years of silence contributed to the divide? I wrestled with the right and wrong of it all, acknowledging that both sides had valid pain. My parents from cultural loss, me from denied acceptance. Business thrived with the fund, now a model for inclusive finance, inspiring other women-led ventures. The trade-offs had reshaped my life into one of purpose beyond approval. As I sat with Colette on our balcony overlooking the city lights, we toasted to the future, the secret no longer a burden, but a foundation. The journey had been one of opposition, betrayal, and hard choices, but also profound growth. In the end, the real success was not the millions managed, but the courage to live openly. The family that once labeled me a failure had witnessed my resilience, though acceptance remained a distant hope. This experience taught me that some conflicts defy easy resolution, demanding ongoing courage. When all was said and done, was my choice to build a life and legacy with Colette worth the pain of my family's rejection? Or did my years of silence make me the true failure they always claimed I was?